Hello, welcome to episode 213 of the Epic Film Challenge 2, 1001 movies you must see before you die. Continuing on with the Apu Trilogy, the second in the trilogy from 1956, Aparajito, or The Unvanquished in its English title. Also from director Satyajit Ray. He initially didn't really want to make a sequel after Pather Panchali in 1955. Obviously it was a success and pushed him to continue to adapt the source novels Pather Panchali and Aparajito respectively, and I think he kind of took little bits and not exactly adapted each novel in full form. I think some of this film was from the end of the first novel, so he kind of took some things from different parts of each book, I suppose, and I think he took more of a creative license with the sequel and told the story in a different way, especially in relation to the relationship between the mother and the son. So, what did I think of this sequel? If you saw my previous review, which you probably should have if you're watching this one, I loved Pather Panchali. It became an instant favourite. I just thought that there was so much life in that film. I loved it so much. So the stakes were high for Aparajito. I thought, man, I'm really intrigued to see this story get continued, but is it going to match up to the first film? And the short version is it didn't. It really didn't, but they are big shoes to fill. The film picks up pretty much where we left off with the end of the first film, probably a few years after that, where we follow the family of Apu, his mother and his father, moving to a big city. In India, everything's different, and that's one of the wonderful things about these films, is the culture. And there was a really good quote that I heard in one of the special features on Filmstruck, the streaming service, and someone was saying that what Satyajit Ray does with his films is he shows us this Indian culture that's so far removed from our own culture over here in this side of the world, but he presents the themes within that culture as universal. You relate to the characters, you don't relate to the cultural situations and things like that, but you relate to the human emotion of it. And that's certainly something I've gotten out of his films, is that kind of intrigue of a world that is so foreign to me, but also the relation and the connection to the feelings of the characters. We follow again Apu, his mother and father, moving to this city. Lots of stairs, lots of concrete, a stark contrast to the very rural setting of the first film. The father continues his work as a priest. He gives these sermons or classes, I suppose, religious classes, right on the shore of the Ganges, the big river in India. I'm assuming that's what it was. I'm not entirely sure, but it looked huge, and I think that is the one that was shown in the film. And the mother does what she can. Apu runs around the city and does whatever he does and plays. But my problem with the film was this first part of the film. It's about 40-45 minutes, and then we take another time jump. Much like the first film, though the first film was about 15 to 20 minutes before we did a time jump. In Aparajito, it's a bit more of an even split. I'd say there's about 40-45 minutes of Apu around 10 years old, and then it leaps forward to him as a teenager for maybe an hour, I think. So more of an even split with the time difference, but something happens and then things change. And I just feel like I can't really talk about it without spoiling things. So it's a difficult one. It really is. But the first half of the film, or that first segment where Apu is living in that city and he's about 10 years old, I didn't love it. It was done very well, and I still think that the actress who plays Apu's mother, and I keep forgetting her name. I try to remember it because her work has been so impressive in these first two films in the Apu trilogy that I had to try to give her a name check. Karuna Banerjee. She's just incredible. She's so good in the first one. She might be even better in this one. And again, I feel like this film is about the mother, It's the Apu trilogy, but to me, the first two films at least, are more about the mother and her relationship with her family. So, it's one of those things. I don't think it takes away from it, but it's almost like the Apu trilogy is this kind of false advertising, though it does follow a character from childhood, or literally being born, all the way up to adulthood in the third film, which I haven't seen yet. What really didn't fit right with me in the first half of the film was Apu. We have a new actor. The actor who played him in the first film, one and done, never did another film again. And there was something so, as I said in the previous video, so magical about that kid. and it just wasn't there with this one. I mean, the kid was fine, but also the screen time. I don't feel like Apu is in that part of the film very much. It's more about the parents, and you know, she's like, where's Apu? Or he's run off somewhere, and then he comes in, and I just didn't feel a connection with Apu. And so that kind of rendered the dramatic weight of that first half of Aparajito practically non-existent almost. I didn't feel it. And I felt so gutted that I didn't feel it. But the second half of the film, as we do that time jump, we enter a new actor playing Apu. And I far preferred him. And, you know, it's hard. It really is difficult because in my mind's eye, I'm thinking of Apu as this young, you know, kind of cute little kid with these wide eyes, with so much wonder of the world. And when you grow up, you do lose that, you know. It doesn't matter if you have those kind of boyish good looks or those girlish good looks and the, you know, that kind of visual. You know, when you just see a kid and they just look so cute and fresh-faced. It's like a symbol of innocence, you know. And you do lose that as you grow up, you know. There's no escaping it. We all age, even as, you know, teenagers, you know, and faces become a little more hardened and chiseled and, you know, maybe acne-ridden. But you know what I mean? Like, it just, you lose something there in the visual. And so I think of Patha Panchali and those beautiful close-ups of Apu and that spark in his eye and that kind of the wonder in his smile. You know, I'm just throwing too much shit at the camera at this point, but hopefully you get my point. And then, you know, as he grows up, you lose some of that. Like when he's a teenager, he's got this kind of young offender's mustache and he's gangly and, you know, it's what happens. But I really liked the actor who played the teenage Apu. He really conveyed the apathy that is essential to his character in the second half of the film. And the actor who plays Apu is a young boy, 10 years old, a little bit older than he was in the first film. He's kind of that awkward middle stage actor where, you know, as far as the teenager and the young version are concerned across the first two films, he doesn't seem to connect very well with the other two. And I don't think he was bad by any stretch, and maybe if I saw the film again I'd feel differently, but I didn't feel grabbed in by this kid, so that was a problem. The only thing that really kept that first half of the film afloat for me was the acting of the mother and the father to some degree. But again, is it Karuna, Banerjee? Incredible actress. It's a shame she only did a handful of films. She's so brilliant in these two films. I cannot praise her enough. I think she was just remarkable, honestly. Not to again, I throw those words out there a lot, but it really is worth using those kinds of words for her performance, in my opinion. Now, is it a film you must see before you die? I'm going to have to go into spoilers. For me, it's not. Controversial. Overall, bell to bell, I feel like it's a much weaker film, even though it is executed very, very well, and there's some really good acting in it, and it is essential to his story. And when we get to the third film, it'll be intriguing to see where it all connects. And maybe once I see the third film, it's like, now I appreciate the second one so much more. I don't know. But for now, as I'm working through it in order, it didn't hold up to the first film in quite a large degree, I think. It's still a really, really good film. It maybe even be a great film, but it's not an essential one, I don't feel like. And it's to do with that disconnect with the two halves, and I just feel like I can't reconcile that. And, you know, to me, it isn't a film you must see before you die. I could look at that first film, Patha Panchali, and say, that is an incredible film that you must see, and it doesn't need to go on beyond that. The story is told in that kind of movie. I love that I get to see more from the story, particularly from the actress who plays Apu's mother, because I think she's just great, and I love seeing her on screen. And then there's a third film, so I don't know how I'm going to feel about that. But yeah, gut reaction, not quite. I understand why it's there, and again, maybe the perspective of seeing the third one will make me change my mind. Maybe I'll retroactively, you know, in the next video say, okay, maybe it is a film you should see before you die because it's essential to the whole story. I don't know, but for now, on its own merit, and kind of compared to the first film, it's a no for me. Now, let's get into some spoilers. Now I can talk to you about why I had a problem with this film. When Apu's father dies, I didn't feel it at all, and I should have. Well, I felt a little bit because of the reaction of the mother, who conveyed that kind of almost stiff upper lip kind of reaction. She's trying to hold it together for her son, but she's obviously devastated. She's lost her husband. But just knowing the backstory of their kind of tumultuous marriage and all the stuff that they've been through, it's just, you can't believe that this woman has to go through this. And Apu as well. But again, my focus was more on the mother. And so she's lost, you know, her aunt. I don't know if it really was her old aunt from the first film. She's lost her aunt, she's lost her daughter, she's lost her husband. And then we flash forward and her and Apu go and live with her uncle, and they're back to square one basically. They made it to the city, and then they're back in that kind of rural, kind of poverty-stricken lifestyle where Apu has to work as a training priest as a young teenager. But I loved the stuff where Apu wanted to learn more when he was in school. I should have talked about that in the non-spoiler version, but hopefully you're still with me. I loved the stuff where Apu was getting so excited at the possibilities of knowledge and life and something bigger than what he'd been restricted to for all of his life, which is this very small existence, and there's so much more to the world. There's a fantastic scene when he gets a globe from his professor or his teacher, and he brings it home to his mother, and he's like, this is a globe, and he's showing it to her excitedly. He's like, these lines are the countries, the blue is the ocean. It's just such a wonderful scene, you know, and he's running, you know, out to the plains going, Africa, and he's dressed up like an African, like he's just so excited to learn about other places in the world and other ideals, philosophy, all that kind of stuff. He gets excited and inspired by the teachers who see the promise in him, and they suggest that he takes a scholarship and goes to Calcutta, which is a few hours away from where they live, and that's what he wants to do. And his mother initially balks at this, and it's a great scene where she's like, well, you can't just leave, you know, you're just going to leave me here on my own, you know. And so he gets really pissed off and he storms off, and then she realizes, well, no, he's got to go. You know, why should I hold him down? Why should I hold him back? I don't want him to go, but it's the right thing to do. And so she lets him go. And it's just heartbreaking because this woman has been through so much shit over these two films. Again, losing her daughter, her husband, and now she's in a way losing her son to a degree and letting him go. And that's something that all parents, for the most part, will go through, is letting their kids go, in that sense of them going to university or them moving out for the first time. You've brought them up, you've spent, you know, half a lifetime or quarter of a lifetime kind of, you know, molding this person into the person they've become, and then you've got to let them go and be the person that they will then mold themselves into. You've done your work to a degree. And so I think a lot of people could relate to this. But again, that the poverty plays into it, and they have very little. And I love how she's kind of kept some money away, and she decides to give it to him to go off and do this studying and stuff, and she really makes that sacrifice. The whole two films to me are about a mother's sacrifice, told in this very extreme, you know, version of a family drama where it's poverty is a huge part of it, and she sacrifices everything pretty much, and it is devastating when he's off in Calcutta and he's working and he's studying and he's making friends, and he hasn't really got much time for his mother. And when he does visit home and she's so elated to see her son come back, he's not even interested really in, you know, in being there. You know, he wants to get back to school, and then she's excited and he's not, and it just, mother and son drifting apart. And I almost feel like a kid who's been through the life that Apu has, losing his sister, his father, he'd be so kind of clingy to his mother. He wouldn't want to leave her side, but, you know, sometimes that's the way it is, and young people, they want to kind of, you know, be free and do their own thing. And so it affects people in different ways, but to me that's so alien from what would have happened if I was in that situation. I grew up with a single mother for the most part, and my mum, it was me and my mum for a long time, and I couldn't imagine taking her for granted to that degree. And, you know, it happened to me later on in life, but when I moved away from home for the first time, it was this huge move away from home where I was moving to a different country here in Norway, you know, where it's just impossible to just quickly go back home. And I get to a point where I only see my mother for, you know, a week or two every 6 months, which is still hard, even now, you know, but as a kid, like, I couldn't imagine it. And, you know, she's writing to him saying, Apu, come back for the festival, and he comes back maybe a week later than he was supposed to, only for a couple of days. He wants to get back, and it's just like, oh my god. And you just see this woman just losing the will to live almost, and she gets sick. And this is again where I almost have a problem with it, because it's almost too melodramatic, you know. We look at the first two films. Apu is born, his sister gets ill and dies, you know, the old aunt gets ill and dies, his father gets ill and dies, his mother gets ill and dies, and then at the end of the film, Apu is left with nothing. And it's so melodramatic, but, you know, where to us that seems melodramatic and over the top, back then, you know, in India, in countries like that, not a lot of, you know, healthcare, especially people who have nothing. And so you get ill and you get no treatment, you're not going to make it. So it certainly isn't an unrealistic thing, but it's so heartbreaking to watch, especially when he takes it for granted so much. So it's a devastating film, almost more than the first one. And again, the actress who plays Apu's mother is just the spine of everything, you know. If Apu is, you know, he's kind of the blood that's coursing through all of these films, she's the spine and the muscle and the heart of it, you know. And I don't know where it's going to go with the third one now that we follow Apu completely on his own as an adult, and how things have changed him, how they haven't, I don't know. I'll be intrigued. I'm kind of sad I won't get to see the actress who plays the mother again, because I can't, again, speak enough good things about her. But overall, very, very good film, almost a great film. And maybe on further rewatches, and again, maybe with perspective of seeing the third film finally, it'll change. But for now, it was one that was definitely a disappointment. But a disappointment that was still a really damn good film. Again, Satyajit Ray, the second film, a great start to a career, I'll tell you that. And from what I've been reading, you know, these films were so important to Indian cinema. Like, they really put the country on the map as a country that could make great films. And that his contribution to cinema in India was huge, you know. And again, like I said in the last video, I think I'd only ever heard of him as this great Indian director. But from what I've been reading and delving into some of the special features on Filmstruck, it really seems like his influence has been huge for the Indian film industry. And it really started with these films that he made, the Apu Trilogy and a few other films in between as well. So I think I'll leave it there. I think I've spoken enough of my thoughts on the film. But yeah, I love the scenes of Apu really getting excited about learning, but was so heartbroken to see, again, just to repeat the phrase I've already used 1,000 times, the way he took his mother for granted. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below, what you thought of the film. Obviously, if you've watched this far, you've seen it. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Maybe you think I'm talking shit. Maybe you think I'm talking bollocks. Maybe you think this is better than the first film. Maybe you think it's just as good. I don't know. And at this point, you can definitely comment down about the third film. I'll already have seen it by the time the video goes up, so I'll be intrigued either way. Just throw all your thoughts down below if you have any of them. And I'll see you in the next video, where I'll be reviewing the final film in the trilogy, Apu Sansa, The World of Apu. So I'll see you with that one. Thanks for watching.